So in our panel session today, we're going to get a chance to dive a little bit deeper into some of these STEM career paths, and we're going to have lots of opportunity for questions. Our panelists are going to share how they got to where they are today, tell us a little bit about their education and some of the choices that they made. We're fortunate to have 4 amazing panelists with diverse backgrounds. They're all at different stages of their career. You can find them listed in your program. So I'd like to introduce Emily Levesque. She's an assistant professor of astronomy at the University of Washington. And we've got Jenan Abderrahman, process control engineer at Lakeside Process Controls, and she's also a senior instructor at Zebra Robotics. Monica Torres, she's a general surgeon at Grand River Hospital and St. Mary's General Hospital, and also Jessie Popp, wildlife specialist at the Anishinaabe Ontario Fisheries Resource Centre and adjunct professor at Laurentian University. So welcome to all of our panelists, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. To start the panel discussion, I'm just going to have each panelist briefly introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves. During that time, you can certainly make your way to the microphone so we can be ready to jump into questions right after. Emily, let's start with you.
All right, hi everybody, and I'm now breaking a 3-person chemist streak. I am an astronomer, and I was interested in this career from a really young age. I got into astronomy, I think, when I was about 2 years old, and my family did some stargazing in my backyard. Growing up, I stayed incredibly interested in science. I had a mix of other interests as well. I was really into music and theater, and I really liked writing. So deciding to go into science, I remember worrying that I was going to lose some of those areas that I was really interested in. And it's actually been amazing to me how much those interests in the arts have helped me as a scientist and have been things I've been able to still pursue. So I decided to go into science. I did an undergraduate degree at MIT, and then I went to graduate school at the University of Hawaii, and there I got my PhD in astronomy. After that, I worked at the University of Colorado for 5 years as a postdoctoral researcher, and now I'm about 2.5 years into working as a professor. It's a really interesting job. I get to do research, I get to teach, I really get to do a mix of things, and I'm thoroughly enjoying being a scientist, and I'm really glad that I made that decision years ago.
Awesome, thanks, Emily. Jenan?
Awesome. So my name is Jenan, and I always thought that I was going to be a lawyer. It didn't turn out to be like that. I currently work as a process control engineer, which I like to explain as when you have companies that make a certain product. For example, if you wanted to make Coke, you'd need a whole bunch of products, and there would be some tanks and some valves and some pumps, and all of those things need to work together in order to make Coke. So you would need to check the levels in the tanks, you would need to open the valves, and I code all of that so that it can kind of work together. And so people who are operating that plant know what's going on and make sure that they're actually making Coke and not something completely disgusting. And I also teach robotics to younger kids. I currently teach students between the ages of 6 and like 10. And we do very simple coding and robotics, and I really just like them because they're so cute. So that's one of the reasons that I'm doing that. I graduated from Ryerson University in avionics, so I really studied aerospace engineering, but I found that it was very, very specific, and I went into it on recommendation of some of my teachers, and I don't think that I researched the industry enough, so I wanted to do something a little bit more general after school, and that's why I ended up doing process control.
Monica?
So my name is Monica Torres. I'm a surgeon at Grand River Hospital. So basically, if you probably might get appendicitis, there's a big chance that I'll be seeing you at the hospital. I hope you don't get it. But that's me. I was born in Colombia, so South America, and then I immigrated to Canada about 15 years ago. I did medicine in Colombia, did general surgery in Colombia, and then decided to get out of the country for whatever reasons, violence and all those things. And opportunities came in Canada. It was, I made the right people at the right time, but I had to redo everything again. So all the training that I did in Colombia didn't mean anything, and I had to come here and do my 5 years of general surgery again. So that was hard, but it's got me to where I am. And then the other thing that happened was that I had to work in another service area for 5 years because I was an international medical graduate. So I ended up in Goderich for 5 years. It's a town of 8,000 people. And I realized that, well, I liked it and it's beautiful, but I'm not a small town person. And then I got a job here in Grand River Hospital about a year ago. Very happy to be here. It's been a long journey. It's not been easy, but it's definitely just keep your goals where you want to go and keep working on it and never stop. Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Jessie?
Hi, so I'm a wildlife ecologist, and I've pretty much known since I was a kid what I wanted to do. My mother used to take me out in the forest all the time, and she would be collecting plants, and I grew this really deep appreciation for the natural environment, for wildlife. It wasn't until I was a little bit older, but still a kid, that I learned about what extinction was, and that species across the world were becoming at risk or threatened with extinction. And that, that really made me concerned, because this world I was so in love with was now in jeopardy. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to devote my life to not only helping with conservation, but to ensuring the animals didn't get to that point where they were threatened. So ensuring sustainable wildlife populations, that populations weren't declining through time. So I went on and I did a Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and PhD, which was great. Quite a few years of school, but really fun. As I got up to the graduate levels, I got to do like everything I wanted to do. Work in large mammals, which is something that I really like to do. So I've worked with species like black bears and wolves and elk, moose, white-tailed deer, boreal caribou, but I also dabbled in with other species as well. So I've worked on howler monkeys in Nicaragua. I did some fisheries work, some entomology, so insects. So really great. I got to do a lot of field work, which is important to me because I love being out in the natural environment. So a lot of ATVing and hiking and canoeing. I did animal trapping, telemetry. Also did a lot of flying. So I've done a lot of wildlife surveys through helicopter and fixed wing. So really great. One thing I noticed though when I was going through school was that Indigenous perspectives, Indigenous knowledge weren't really incorporated in the science courses that I was in the program. So I kind of made that. It wasn't until I did some learning myself that I even found out what traditional ecological knowledge was, and that's essentially knowledge that Indigenous people have about the environment that's passed down through generations, and that's really important knowledge. And when you combine that with Western science, you can really advance modern science. So I made that part of my career to bring that awareness, how important that was. So I integrate it now in my research. With the Anishinaabe Ontario Fisheries Resource Centre, I help First Nation communities in Ontario with wildlife monitoring and research projects, and always integrating Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous perspectives with Western science approaches. And at Laurentian University, I supervise graduate students working on those programs and teach courses in that area. So it's been a great time in my career, and I just love what I do, and I have lots of fun doing it.
Thanks so much. Okay, well, we're going to take your questions now. So please make your way to the mic, but maybe just to get things started, I was chatting with, so please, guys. So I was chatting with some of you guys this morning, and I noticed a lot of you were saying things like, I have to figure out what I'm going to do, and I have no idea what I'm going to do, and how do I know, or these kinds of things. And was there a moment, it sounds like you, Jessie, you knew from a young age what you wanted to do, but was there a moment for you guys where you were like, I know exactly what I want to do, and I'm going to just go get it, or was it kind of more incremental along the way?
I know in my case, I knew really early on that I really loved astronomy, but I loved a lot of things. I think I know most of our audience is in high school, and you do so many different things in high school, and there's a lot of activities that you enjoy. And I remember debating near the end of high school studying astronomy or actually studying music. I was a very serious violinist and was considering doing that instead. And I think what ultimately made my mind up was I thought about, one, it seemed easier to do violin as a hobby than to do astrophysics as a hobby. And I realized that if I went into that career and watched astronomy go on and saw people making these exciting discoveries, I'd be a little sad that I wasn't a part of it. So it sort of turned into, what of the things I love would I most miss if I wasn't able to do it? And that was what ultimately kicked off the decision for me.
Awesome. Yeah, and did you have any?
When I was in high school, the reason that I decided to go into engineering was because I had a teacher, and he was very inspiring to me because he was actually trained as an engineer in university, and then he did teachers college afterwards and became a physics teacher, but he was also a professional chocolatier and chef, and he would compete and make these amazing chocolate sculptures and take them to like world competitions. And it was crazy to me that he had so many different things that he was passionate about, but also kind of incorporated into his career strategy and into his career path. And so when I spoke to him about, like, I was like, I'm sure of it, I love physics now, and I'm just gonna do everything physics, I'm gonna be a physics teacher. And he's like, you know, why don't you learn engineering? Why don't you see what else is out there? And so his ability to kind of have, I don't wanna say different career paths, but kind of dabble in different things that were completely separate from one another, really made it comfortable for me to do that. And so when I did engineering, I had the intention of going to teachers college after, but then when I started teaching robotics, I realized that this was kind of a good mix of both, and I could still kind of be hands-on with teaching robotics, and that was part of the thing that I liked about engineering, was it was very hands-on. So that helped me kind of in that sense.
Awesome, thanks. I see we've already got a great queue, so maybe we'll switch over to your guys' questions. Yeah?
Hi, my name is Ima Kagoma. I go to St. John's College, and this question's mostly for Popp and Levesque. But how did you really delve into and explore like those non-traditional STEM careers otherwise than, say, engineering or medicine that people generally think?
So I really liked astronomy from the get-go. I remember reading a book when I was a little kid about, it was a children's book about a kid who had a toy transformer that could transform into a spaceship and fly him around the solar system. So from early on, I knew that's what I was interested in. And I had relatives who knew that I was interested in science and were asking me, well, do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be a doctor? And I think their questions were coming from a really reasonable perspective, especially for anybody that sort of came from a middle class or working class family, of astronomy seems neat, but are there jobs? And maybe if you study engineering or medicine, something with a really clear career path, that'll be better. And I was mostly stubborn because I knew that that was what I loved. I said, engineering is fascinating. My brother's an engineer. I have uncles who are engineers, but I really want to do astronomy. So it came from really getting sucked into that specific field that kind of captured my imagination.
Jesse, did you have anything to add?
Yeah. So so like I said, I've always wanted to do wildlife ecology. And actually, when I was in high school, I really wanted to share that with my teachers and say, like, tell me what to do. How do I go pursue this dream? And just share with how excited I was. And I remember in upper year, grade 11, I talked to one of my teachers, a math teacher, and just said, you know, I want to do biology and help me out. And he looked at me and said, you know, if I were you, I probably wouldn't pursue biology. There's really no jobs. There's not great money. And I was like, oh. And I was, you know, kind of stunned. And I thought, well, geez, I'm not going to pursue biology if I'm never going to get a job. So I didn't. So actually what I first did was go to college. I went to college to become a veterinary technician, which was still animals, so still cool, very interesting. I did a year of that, and I said, you know what, this is interesting, but this is not what I want. This is not what I live for. This is not what I'm meant to do. So I said, you know what, no, I gotta try. I can't live my life and say I've never tried to become a biologist. So I tried. I went to university, and here I am. I'm a biologist. And what I want to say to you guys is, like Linda was saying, there's quite a few things that you have to take into consideration when you're deciding on the direction that you want to go. Are there jobs? Are there not? Or money, and that can influence your decision. But those decisions aren't meant to, you know, prevent you from following your dream. They're meant to prepare you. If you're going into a field that doesn't have many jobs, you just makes yourself aware that you have to work harder. There's not very many jobs, but there are some, and someone gets those jobs, right? So if you're dedicated enough, if you work hard enough, you will become what you want to be. So that's what happened with me.
Thank you.
My name's Carly. I'm from KCI, and I was just wondering, in following this path, did you have any regrets about following this path, or like opportunities you didn't take?
Monica, maybe we'll start with you.
It's funny you asked that question because I was talking about it last night. There was one, when I was growing up in Colombia, the last year of my medical school, we could go outside and to North America or Canada and do a rotation there. So I decided to go to Harvard Medical School and stay there for a month and did laparoscopic surgery. And I loved it and it was amazing, but I wanted to go back to Colombia. And I remember that one day this doctor said, well, why don't we go and have lunch? I said, yeah, sure, I'll have lunch. And he said, well, I think you're very smart. I want to help you get into North America, go do your exams, and and I said, no, you know what? I want to go back to Colombia. I want to be a doctor in Colombia. I want to work for my country. And then I went back to my country. So now I think, well, what would have happened if I had said yes to that question so many years ago? So yes, so some opportunities you do let go. You regret? No, because I'm here now. But I do wonder what would have happened if I had said yes at that time.
Anybody else feel like they want to comment on that? Or no? Okay, we can move on.
So, hi, my name's Jessica Guerrero. I'm from Assumption College in Brantford. And science sometimes seems like it's its own secluded little world, and it feels like it's in a box and it's sort of unreachable. But it's obviously very important to society, and a lot of advancement comes from science. So I'm wondering, and I'm sort of directing this more towards Emily since I'm a future physics and astronomy student, and astronomy is one of my passions. How do you feel that your field of science contributes to the world, and how do you think it can help society in the future?
I love this question when it comes to astronomy because it does not, at face value, look like a very practical field. So my research specialty is how really massive stars evolve and explode as supernovae and die. And there isn't necessarily an immediate technological advance that's going to happen tomorrow if we understand how a star evolves. But one, we never have a roadmap for discovery, so it's really hard to say if something we're studying and just starting to understand at really like the forefront of physics now might be practical later. I also like thinking of astronomy in particular as a gateway science. It's a science that everybody has been curious about. If you've ever looked up at the sky, you've gotten some sort of question about astronomy. And photos from Hubble or other telescopes are on the cover of the New York Times, on the cover of Discover magazine. So it's a great science for capturing people's curiosity. And it works great with little kids. When I give public talks, I'll get a line of 8-year-olds who all want to know everything about black holes. And I don't necessarily think that all of those 8-year-olds are going to become astronomers, but they've all had their curiosity piqued about science. So maybe then when they go back to school, they think, well, math class is going to help me do science, or I'll pay attention in my science class and maybe discover another passion. So I think it's helpful as a way of funneling people into other fields that they might eventually find a serious passion in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I go to St. John de Brébeuf High School in Vaughan. And I have a question for Monica. I was wondering, what advice do you give for young women who want to pursue a career in the medical field?
You have to study hard. It's a long process. It's a never-ending process because you're always studying. And people say, well, it's going to take you many years to finish. Well, it's going to take you your whole life to finish. I just finished a course a year ago about quality and safety in healthcare. So even now, I'm still studying. So just think that you're going to always study. It's going to be hard. You're going to have some difficult moments along the way. But if you really want to get there, just put it in your mind. And it might take you 20 years. But it took me 20 years to get here. So just work on it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bianca Laube, and I'm from KCI, and I was wondering if there was any point in your career where you thought you weren't good enough for what you wanted to pursue, even though you loved it. Did you worry that you weren't good enough to actually become successful?
Anybody want to go with that one first? Or?
I can start, I guess. I'm not sure. You always have moments where you're not sure, or I can't say you always, but I've had moments in my career where I wasn't sure if I knew enough. And sometimes when you just graduate from school and you feel like you've learned a lot of theory and you feel like you're ready because you've spent 4 years, or if you've done degrees after that, then even longer, and you get out into the field and you're ready to start working and you're ready to start doing what you've been trained to do. And then you start and you go maybe meet with some customers or meet with some new people or have your manager, your boss come and talk to you about things, and you're listening to them, and sometimes you don't always understand 100% of what they're saying, or you'll get started on the project and you're not completely certain if you're ready for that, and then comes that little bit of doubt, I guess, where you're like, oh, maybe I don't know enough, or maybe I need to study some more. Like, I guess I'm done school now, but I think like Monica said, like learning is never done, and you continuously learn as you're working. And I think it's that when you feel that, just having some confidence to know that you're still starting out, you need to ask questions, you need to try and learn more through the people that you're around, but also have confidence in what you do know. And also, sometimes I think when you feel like that, you also let what people say to you kind of get to you a little bit. When I first went to site, I had my hard hat and like my steel toes, and I'd never worn steel toes before. So I was like, oh, okay, let's do this. And I went to site with my hard hat, and the site manager was like, could you even put that on like over your scarf? And I was like, I don't know, I never tried it before, but I'm gonna try it now, and I think it will be fine. And it was just like his lack of confidence in me and like my ability to be there kind of made me a little bit nervous, but then I kind of turned it around for myself, and I was like, you have to now show him that you fit in here, and like you will rock these steel toes. They're so ugly, but you will rock them, and like you will wear this hard hat and have like a line on your forehead for the rest of the day, but it will be great, and you will show him that you can be here and like be the engineer that he really doesn't think that you are, you know? So I think you definitely have moments of that, especially maybe when you're first starting out in your career, because you're really not sure. But the more confidence you have, and I think like good support too, like sometimes I'll call my dad and I'll just be like so upset, and he'll say like, don't worry, you're fine, just do what you need to do, and you'll come home and you're gonna tell me that it's totally fine and you had the best day ever, but right now you're just freaking out because you're just starting out. So yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that feeling is completely normal. I think most people probably feel like that. I know I personally do quite a lot, and at first you really get those feelings like, I don't know if I can do this, this is so intimidating. But you know, the more and more you prove yourself to yourself, like those kind of fears start slipping away, and you gain more confidence, like, yes, I can do this. But even still to this day, I'm gonna be completely honest, when I was invited to attend this event, I was so excited because this is something I love to do. I hope that one of you in here will be inspired to maybe become a wildlife ecologist. But you know, and so I immediately accepted. But after that, I did some looking through who the women who would be attending here with me today and who have in the past, and I was like, oh my God, I'm like so intimidated. Like these are super women. These are amazing, incredible women. And yet, like I said, I was intimidated, but then I realized, you know what? I'm kind of a superwoman too. I've made my dreams come true. In my own little way, I'm contributing to making the world a better place. And every one of you in the audience, you all have that inside you, that career superwoman. And you know, it can come out, and be confident and let yourself shine because you really can do anything.
And I would like to say something else regarding that. It happens very frequently that other people don't think you can make it. It happened to me many, many times. And I would say I learned from each time that it happened. And then it made me think, okay, so you don't think I can do it, but I think I can do it. So how am I going to prove to you that I can do it? So there are these options, and there's not only one option because not only one thing works. So try one, try two, try three, and one of these is going to work, and it's going to show the other person that you can do it. But you have to believe in yourself and just every time, and know that it's going to happen because it will happen.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen. I'm from St. Elizabeth Catholic High School in Vaughan. I was wondering, maybe specifically as an engineer, if there are any specific extracurriculars or personal projects that you have done that you would encourage us as well to do.
So I think that one thing I really recommend for young girls to take part in, or if your school or if your community center have like robotics teams or competitions, not necessarily for the actual what you will build, But the skills that you learn there and the people that you meet a lot of times in high school, if you have like a robotics team, you'll meet other, there are engineering mentors and stuff who will come in, and you'll get to meet them and talk to them and get comfortable with them and hear their story. And I think that in high school, that a lot of people told me to do this and I was so nervous, but it was like, if you have a job that you have in mind and you kind of want to know what that person does, reach out to them and see what they do. But then whenever I'd like get the courage to go on LinkedIn and like search up like, oh, this person has this job, I want it, and like try and message them, I would just freeze up and be like, oh, they don't want to hear from me, like I'm 15, they don't care. But I think when you have those mentors or when you do activities that kind of let those mentors naturally into your life and you can learn from them through that, then that is also just really helpful. And from the teams that I've seen, like high school robotics teams or like coding competitions and stuff like that, a lot of girls kind of shy away from it because they're typically male-dominated teams. But I find that the girls who go out for those are just so skilled and talented, and they just don't realize because they've just been kind of nervous to join and do activities like that. So yeah, I think that would be my recommendation.
As an instructor in robotics, do you have like any tips on specific programs that you would recommend, or it's mostly depends on what school, things like that?
Sorry. I think that through school or through teachers, you can get a lot of good resources, but if you maybe want to start something on your own to see what you like maybe you like more of the electronic side of things, or maybe you like more of the building side, or maybe you're into coding and the that side of it, the back software side of it, then there are tons of resources that even if you go into the Apple store, they have like a full wall of robots on the side where like they have one that's like a sphere that you can learn coding on completely, and you can do it all by yourself. They have like an app and they've made it completely user friendly, and it's really pretty with lots of colors, and like you can code and it like fills in the rest of the code for you, like autocorrect, and it's great. So if you want to do something like that, like just going to places like the Apple Store or even Best Buy and trying out like simple robotics first is always a good step. But other than that, yeah, I think that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Grace, and I had a question about like society in general. So a lot of times there's going to be conflicting desires and beliefs of different people with your own beliefs, and also with money and all of that. So how do you reach a conclusion or a decision, because your decision may not align with others? How do you reach the right decision?
That's a good question. That's a big question, I think. So is your question more geared to how do you navigate people's different beliefs in your career? Does anybody?
So I know that one version of this is when you're trying to decide like what you're going to study in college or where you're going to go to college, and you'll be getting advice from your teachers and from your friends and from your parents, and sometimes the advice completely conflicts. So one person will say, do thing A, and another person will say, do thing B, and you're left going, okay. The best way that I've found is to try and gather as broad a variety of advice and opinions as I possibly can, and then make the decision myself. And it's not a matter of getting advice and ignoring it, but it's a matter of gathering perspectives and then trying to synthesize those and think, well, what actually makes the most sense for me? Where do I actually think the right decision lies here? And that actually goes a little bit into something that's come up of self-confidence, and somebody else mentioned imposter syndrome during one of the talks. And that doesn't just involve, the confidence to say, I can do math. Sometimes it involves the confidence to say, I can make these decisions. And I can listen to people who may be older than me, who may have more life experience, but this is a decision that I can gather information on and decide for myself. So that's its own kind of confidence that winds up being really helpful as you try to sort of make these decisions based on sometimes very conflicting opinions. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Anybody else have anything to add? No? Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah from St. Mary's High School, and my question was more geared towards like Dr. Torres. Obviously, in your career, you would deal with, as a surgeon, you would deal with kind of patient death and kind of like a sad atmosphere. Did that ever affect you and change like how you, like maybe make you think that you wouldn't be able to handle it?
So when you go through medicine, they teach you how to manage that because it's very hard, but you have to learn how to deal with it. And that's part of what you learn during medical school and during residency is how to deal with that, how to understand it, how to help other people through that journey. And you learn how to do that.
And also just a quick question. Again, with kind of struggles and challenges, how did you find it when redoing your training, being with people that were like maybe younger than you and just starting out their career while you had all the same experience?
So it was very, very hard to redo. You feel like you're redoing high school, and that's the way I felt the first few years. And it was very difficult. I asked for help to my teachers, and the university had help. And at the end, I decided that I was going to learn the best from what I was learning and learn from the people that were younger than me and learn as much as I could. It wasn't easy at all. And I would respect everybody, and I don't know everything, and it was a learning experiences, and medicine changes every day. So what I learned during my first residency, it's different than what I learned in my second residency, and then I got to think, well, this is different. I'm going to learn more and just respect everybody, and you can learn from everybody, young or old, so just know that you're going to learn every day.
Thank you.
Hello. Sorry. Hello, my name is Sophia, and I'm from WCI, and it's sort of like the previous question. So when you moved from Columbia and you had to go through all of the training, what helped you keep motivated? Like, what made you keep thinking that I still want to be a surgeon, a doctor, I don't want to switch to another profession because maybe it'll be easier to go that instead of going through all the training again?
So at that point in my life, I knew I wanted to be a surgeon, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. So, so that was my goal. And I thought, okay, what do I need to do in order to make this happen? And try to go through each one of those steps. So I learned everything that I had to do in order to make it happen. So what exams I needed to take, what people I needed to meet, and started knocking doors, and talked with program directors and talked with everybody, asked as many questions as I could, talked with as much people as I could to learn what I needed to do in order to get there. And the main thing was, I'm not going to stop until I'm there, and nothing's going to stop me. So I'll just keep going. And it took me 7 years, but I just kept going and going and going. And whatever challenge I had to find a way to go and make things happen.
Thank you. And I like your shoes, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm Christine Hoskin from Georgetown District High School, and I know, especially as like a woman in STEM, there's going to be hiccups along the way in your career. So this is a question directed to all of you on how you deal with those hiccups, and when things don't go your way, how do you, like, any advice for picking yourself back up and kind of accepting failure and learning from it?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of hiccups. It's a bumpy road through pursuing academia. There's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of perceived barriers. People today were talking about barriers, and as we know, these are all perceived. So you can surpass them, you can get going through and continue on with what you want. And just keep in mind, like, you know, there's downs and there's ups. So you're gonna make it through, but it's okay to get stressed out, and it's okay to, you know, take a break and cry for 2.5 seconds, as long as you get back up, because, you know, if that's what you want, you got to make sure that you get there one day.
And one thing that way is get someone that supports you. It's important to have somebody that you can call when you're down, and you know that they're gonna bring you back up.
Thank you.
It's pretty much the same, like that.
I think the one thing I'd add is you'd mentioned that there are downs, but there are also ups. And I think it's human nature for anybody, and something that's sometimes especially easy for women to internalize, to make a lot more of the downs than the ups. I teach, And as part of my classes, I'll get teaching evaluations and I'll get 50 comments saying, this class was awesome, and 1 comment saying, I didn't like it, and I fixate on the 1. So when you're running into setbacks, it's very natural to be disappointed, to be upset, like you said, to cry for 2.5 seconds and then keep going. I think it's just as important when something goes your way to take the win and really celebrate it. And sometimes it's easy to say, oh, well, I just got that award because of so-and-so reason, or, oh, maybe this wasn't that big a deal. And it's really good to go, no, I got this because I'm awesome. And that momentum sometimes helps carry you through the next time something goes poorly, that you can look back and say, well, this was a setback, but things have also gone really well. So in aggregate, things are still fine.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Amy. I'm from Sir John A. Macdonald Secondary School. My question was, obviously going into the fields you went into, you probably had to make some sacrifices. And I was wondering what some of those sacrifices would be, and if you regret taking any of those.
I know, Monica, you mentioned maybe you had one already.
So the other, I don't know if I regret it or not, but I made the decision not to have children and to make my career my life. I don't regret it, but it was a big decision.
I think a big sacrifice, at least for me in academia, was time to go, be able to do lots of other things I wanted to do. You have to work hard in some fields. You really, really do have to work hard and focus a lot of your time and energy into succeeding. So yeah, I didn't get to do some of the other things I wanted to do, but what was important to me was the big picture was my dream, making my dream come true. And although I didn't get to have like a lot of free time through the process, I wake up every day and I can't wait to go to work. My entire day is exciting to me. So you do make some sacrifices on the way up, but once you get there, it's so worth it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Catherine. I'm also from SGM, and I was wondering what it was like to be an international student, and if it was really worth it, like, for the opportunities, because I know in Canada, like in Ontario here, we have UW, UT, and Guelph, and all those great universities. Do you think it would be worth it if you went to like another country or as an international student? Because I know it's more expensive, but do you think it would be worth it?
Is there anybody that has, I mean, obviously from going from Colombia,
International experiences or thoughts on that?
So I think that the more international experiences you can gather, the better. Because when you grow up in only one country, you kind of have one vision. But as soon as you leave the country, either for a more developed country or underdeveloped country, your vision grows. And like some of the previous speakers said about going to Africa or South America, or even going to the States and going to big universities in the States to get more training, that opens your mind. So I would say get as many opportunities outside of the country as you can, because you already have your Canadian structure, so learn as many outside of Canada that you can.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Trishti, and I'm from Glenview Park in Cambridge. And my question's for all of you. I feel like now that I'm learning about a lot of different things, I'm finding that I'm passionate in a lot of different things. And I feel like if I go into a harder subject like medicine, I'll have to let go of my other passions, which I really don't want to do. Do you have any advice?
So I very much sympathize with being interested in a lot of things and having trouble picking. And one thing that I found really helpful was trying things. I was lucky enough when I was in middle school and then in high school to do things like summer programs where I could take a class, and I think I took like a paleontology class, an astronomy class, a biotech class. And they gave me the chance to immerse myself in things and help sort of narrow down what I thought I would be interested in. And as far as having to give up other interests, I mean, that definitely happened at some point. I started at MIT and declared myself a physics major. Somebody else was asking about times when you thought you maybe weren't good enough. I'd barely ever taken physics. and then jumped into majoring in physics next to people who had literally taken quantum physics in high school. So I was just like, oh my God, for about the first year. And I was trying to play violin at the same time. I had a violin scholarship and I was playing in the MIT orchestra. And I stopped after the first year because I was thinking, well, this is becoming a chore. I don't like it anymore. And I need every second to do the work that I'm doing. So I was sad to stop playing at the time, but I sort of kept it up in the background, and I actually now play again, and I play in the orchestra at the University of Washington. So it is true that sometimes you have to temporarily triage other things that you're doing or put them on the back burner to prioritize what your goal is, but to me that never felt too disappointing because it was in the service of what I knew I ultimately wanted to do, and you're able to sometimes bring them back. If you really do love something, then you can find an opportunity or you can find the time in your life, maybe not right away, but maybe down the road so that you can keep it up.
Thank you.
I think this will be our last question. Thank you.
I'm Sydney from Assumption College in Brantford. It's kind of a similar question, but almost the opposite. I've kind of decided I'd like to go into aerospace engineering, but I'm worried that I'm like narrowing my options and that I'll be like, in the future, if I change my mind, I'll be stuck and I won't have anything to do. Do you have any recommendations?
I think that when you go in to aerospace, you kind of very quickly get a sense of whether or not you enjoy it enough career-wise. But the great thing is that it does take a lot of skills from the other engineerings, like electrical and mechanical, and also a little bit of a computer. And so you do learn a lot of transferable skills, which is why I went into more of an electrical chemical engineering discipline after I started working. And I think that I was very much worried about the same thing when I started because I was recommended to go into aerospace and I was like, oh, it sounds so cool. Like, I'm gonna love it and it's gonna be great and I'm gonna work and it's gonna be awesome. But then when I left school, I felt like I didn't learn enough about different things to know if I could be good at other careers. And I hadn't really done a lot of research on what I could do after school with my degree. But then when I was applying for jobs, I started talking to other engineers and they were like, you know, the biggest limitation that you're putting on yourself is you feel like you're only qualified for certain things. But you can continuously learn, and if you want to go into other industries, or if you want to go into a specific type of aircraft, or if you want to go into just like UAVs, for example, or even spacecraft, then you can also learn and tailor your knowledge to that specific thing. So I don't think in any way that like having a degree in something more specialized will limit you, or has limited me, because now I don't really work in anything related to aerospace, but all of the skills that I have, I can very proudly say I got from my degree.
Thank you.
I actually used to run a program at the University of Colorado for physics and astronomy majors talking about what they could do with their degrees. And astronomy sounds super narrow. Like, how can you possibly generalize that if you want to go into industry or go into other areas? And it's a very similar idea. The skills that you develop are amazingly applicable and you wind up surprised at what you can do. When I was a physics major, I remember my senior year at MIT, the physics major list started getting emails from big financial firms in New York who all, for some reason, wanted to hire us, and we were baffled, but then realized that they were saying, if you can figure out quantum physics, I'm sure you can figure out financial models. And it was less the quantum and more the fact that we learned problem solving. And in other fields, you learn programming, you learn how to manage research groups, you learn how to write grants. So especially in something like aerospace engineering, the skill set that you develop is something that a very wide array of people are going to be really impressed by and really interested in hiring you for. So I wouldn't think of it as narrowing at all. It's just sort of a focused way of developing some really valuable skills.
Thanks. Thank you so much. We're going to close our panel today, but our panelists will be around during the speed mentoring session. So I'm sure if there was a few people that had come down that weren't able to ask their questions, so you'll be able to chat with them, I'm sure, as we move on at the end of the day. But just to close the session, I was wondering if you guys had any closing remarks, thinking about when you were in high school, reflecting back on that time, what is the key message you would like to leave the ladies in this room with today? Maybe Jesse, if I start on that side, I'll start on this side.
Well, just kind of recapping on things I've already said, like
you might see barriers, but again, they're perceived. You'll have ups and downs. It'll be a lot of hard work, but follow your dream, and you know, you'll get there. You'll get there one day, and when you do, it's just going to be incredible.
What I would say is wake up every day to do something that you love, so that every day is a great day. And whatever that is, but just make sure that you love what you do, and you'll be fine.
I think going back to the question about having many passions and many things that you're interested in, never feel like it's too late to pursue any of them. So I think sometimes you start your career at a very young age making decisions for the rest of your life, and then maybe 5 years down the line you're like, oh, like, was this the right thing for me? And then you're kind of scared or limited on how you want to make that change. But someone, when I was just starting university, said to me that wherever your place is in society, you'll find that place. So whatever job you're going to have, somehow you'll get there. And even if it's not where you're at right now, maybe in 10 years, if you're meant to be making furniture, you'll figure out how to get there, and you'll be making furniture because that's what you love. So just don't be scared to make that change, even though that's probably one of the scariest changes to make.
And I think what I'd say is, I know sort of the late years of high school can be, and I think it's easy for some of us to forget this, it can be a really stressful and really sort of, it feels like a very weighty time because you're making decisions that are going to matter for a long time, and those decisions can be very difficult. And my advice is to not try to contain yourself in a box and not try to be dictated by the barriers that you were talking about, since so many of them are conceived and not real, and really step back and think about what you would want to work on that would make you push through the failures and the crying and the sort of temporary exhaustion from work, and what you really want to drive yourself to do, and then go ahead and pursue that. And if somebody's telling you you can't, or that it's impractical, don't listen to that. Listen to what you think is going to drive you the most.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies, for your great insights today.